All right, one last tutorial in this module as we prepare for our edit sessions, and that is getting to know your timeline window. This is where all of the editing takes place. This is where you assemble your program, and so knowing what your timeline window can do and how you can enhance it and organize it to provide for better, more efficient edits is a good idea. So let's take a few moments to get to know our timeline window. When we talk about the timeline window, of course, what we're talking about is this section here. This is the window that we're talking about. And of course, this is where we place our media in order to make our edit decisions to assemble our programs. First of all, let's just stretch this out a little bit so we have more room to work with, and let's learn a few things about our timeline window. First of all, notice that you can expand any of the audio or video tracks so that you can work with them more easily. There are two different ways that you can expand your tracks, make them larger. One is by right-clicking in any of the gray areas here of any track and see that you have height, and you can select various levels of height. However, you can also simply drag each of the individual tracks to grow or shrink. Let's maybe open up a couple of audio tracks here and notice that we can do the same thing with those. Or right-click and change it by using a drop-down menu. Let's go back to our drop-down menu by right-clicking in the gray area. Notice some of our other options. First of all, we can add more video tracks. Let's go ahead and add, say, 3 more video tracks. And you'll notice that they come to the top. If you would have preferred to insert a new video track at the bottom, you'll notice that you do have the option of adding front or back. If you choose the Add Back option and add a video track, you'll notice that you have now inserted a video track below the main track that you had started with. And should you decide that that was a mistake and you don't want that new track inserted there, of course you can always go in and delete tracks. Now it's a good idea in some cases to label your tracks. Let's just stretch this out a little bit so we have a little bit of room to work with here. Let's say you're working with a multi-cam edit. Say you shot a wedding and you had 4 different camera positions, and you've brought in the 4 camera tapes, and you want to work with them simultaneously. Maybe go ahead and label your tracks, your video tracks. And again, you can do this naming function several different ways. One, again, by right-clicking in the gray area there and choosing Rename. Or if you prefer, just clicking in the area here once or twice will bring open the field to allow you to rename it. Perhaps just to give us a little bit more room to work with, let's go in and maybe delete some of these extra tracks that we added, and maybe do some naming down here of our audio tracks. Whenever I start a project, I like to at least start out with the idea of having organized audio tracks, and so we could first of all say ambient audio for our first track, and perhaps for our second track we will have narration, and for our third track we'll call it music, and you'll probably find that you might need a few more audio tracks. Let's go ahead and add at least one more here and call it sound effects. And that should be a good start. You'll notice that you can have these tracks either open or closed, and if you're working with one particular audio track, you'll want to have it open to be able to visually see the audio waveforms there. And let's maybe just stretch this out a little bit so we can see them even better. And if for some reason you would prefer not to see the audio waveforms, you can always shut that off. And you can actually mute the audio track itself by toggling back and forth on the little speaker icon there. And you can also cycle through the various functions of the audio track. If we have this volume option highlighted, we will then be able to manipulate the audio track. Simply by clicking anywhere on our timeline, we can create a node and then bring that down, adjust it. If you want to create another node, simply click in again. Now, oftentimes you'll want to bring the whole track down at once, and you can do that by holding down your Alt key before you point and click to your track. And now, when you bring it down, you bring the whole line down itself. All right. Clicking through here again, we see we do have the option of working with panning our audio. And when this is grayed out or toggled off, we are no longer able to manipulate the audio track using our mouse cursor. I usually like to keep these on so that I have ready access to change my volume levels on individual clips. If I know that I do not want a particular audio track to be affected by any manipulation that I do of the timeline window, I can simply lock that track. And now anything I do to any of the clips on my timeline, I know that this audio track is not going to be affected by any edit decisions that I make. So we can lock or unlock any of the individual audio tracks as we please. Okay, so we've covered the lock, we've covered the waveform, we've covered muting the audio track itself. This other option here I believe we have covered in a previous tutorial, but just as a point of review, this is where we map tracks in order to receive audio as we place or send media to our timeline. For example, let's say we wanted the audio of our clips to land on track 2, while we could map track 2 to receive the audio by asking it to receive audio channels 1 and 2. And now, when we drop a video clip on the timeline, instead of the audio landing on track 1, it will now land on track 2. However, if you realize that isn't really what you wanted, you really did want it on track 1, you can always, once it's on the timeline, you can simply point your mouse to the audio that's on track 2 and drag it up to track 1, and now it's on track 1. All right, let's collapse our audio track there and maybe go up and take a closer look at our video tracks and see what our options are there. If you expand your video track by turning the little arrow here down, you'll see that you have a mix option available here, and what this does is it allows you to determine the levels of video at any particular given point in a clip. For example, let's say that you wanted to bring this up from black. You could take that first node and drag it right down to the bottom so it starts at 0% and then slowly fades up from black to 100% of the video coming through. If for some reason you decided that you didn't want your video at a full 100%, you can drag that down to any level that you like. Or also change the levels at various points in your video clip as you play it. Now, at first glance, this particular mix option may not seem that valuable or useful, but as you begin to work more with EDIUS and develop your skills and begin working with many different levels of video, you can see that you can become quite creative using this mix option, and it gives you more flexibility than what you would have with simply working with, say, a dissolve tool. For example, let's go over to our music video that we've been working with, and if we take a kind of a close look at our tracks here, we see that on video track 1 we have a close-up of our singer, but at this point in the video it's actually video track 2 that has priority over video track 1. Let's maybe expand our timeline here a little bit so we can see this a little better, and bring this up. And so we see that video track 2 is having priority over video track 1, and so we're seeing it 100%. And if we look at the mix blue line here, we'll see that it's at 100%, and so we're seeing it full strength. But then at this point in our music video, track 3 begins to take priority over track 2, but quite slowly. And we'll see that at a certain point it becomes full strength, 100%, but then begins to decrease and actually slowly begins to reveal track 1. And then video 4 takes priority over everything else, but because it's still not at 100%, we're still seeing video track 1 dominant. But as it continues down the line, we see that video track 4 becomes stronger, but because it is not full strength, it's not taking over the video. And there's actually some masking going on there, so that there's only a certain portion of that video that's coming through. Let's collapse our timeline a little bit so we can take a little closer look, and we'll see how working on a complex timeline, that having this mix feature can be very valuable. All right, let's go back to our previous sequence. If you happen to place nodes where you actually, in the end, decided that you didn't want them there, you can always delete nodes, either in your video mix track or also down in your audio tracks. If you reach a point where there were some nodes there that you didn't really want, you can, with your delete key, delete nodes. And how you do that is simply highlight the node that you don't want anymore and then hit the delete key again. And also up in our video track, delete those nodes that you don't want. All right, what else have we got here in our video? Again, you can lock a video track so that that particular track will not be affected by any other edits that you make on other tracks, be it video or audio. And again, we can map our tracks by this middle icon here. Let's say, for example, that we now want our video to land on camera 3 track and our audio to land, say, down on sound effects. Let's map our audio to land on 4. Now when we bring a track down and place it on the timeline, you'll see that it goes to the mapped track video 3 and audio 4. However, once again, you are able to move those after the fact to any track that you want. All right, and also you can mute video tracks as well. All right, let's just notice maybe a few more things. You may have noticed me collapsing my timeline and expanding it. I'm doing this with my plus and minus keys. I simply tap my minus key in order to collapse my timeline, to be able to see more of my timeline at once. Or if I want to zoom right in on a particular edit, a couple of clips, I can just tap my plus key and bring it right in to a particular point in the video that I'm working on, so that I can add dissolves and that type of thing. Trim my edits. However, by default, the plus and minus keys are not assigned to collapse and expand the timeline. I had to do that by going in under Settings, Application Settings, and going down here to customize my keyboard shortcuts to be able to do that. And I think we covered that in a previous tutorial. You can expand your timeline, collapse your timeline by using this little slider bar here and pointing to it with your mouse and dragging it back and forth. However, I do find the keyboard shortcuts much faster. So if you have not already done so, maybe check back in some of the earlier free tutorials of changing your keyboard shortcuts. I think we illustrated how to do that for the timeline. Now, you may have noticed I have a number of sequences here, these little tabs. Each one is a separate sequence with a completely different edit that I'm working on. Now, when you first start a project, EDIUS will open with only one sequence, and it'll be unnamed. It'll just say sequence 1 like this. How do you name some of these sequences like I have done here? Well, just simply right-click on the tab itself and go down to Sequence Settings. And there, EDIUS gives you the option of renaming your sequence, and we'll call this one Timeline, since we're working on the timeline. All right, now let's say you want to create new sequences. How do you do that? Well, there is a way to do it with your drop-down menus here under File, New, and then Sequence. You'll see that you can also use the keyboard shortcut, Shift-Control-N. However, there is a icon here on your icon strip at the very top of your timeline window. The file folder there at the very left-hand corner, if you click on it once, EDIUS will give you a new tab, a new sequence, and you can go in and change the name to that. Let's say Test. And now we have a brand new sequence to work with. And it's very helpful to have the ability to have a number of sequences within any given project to allow you to do different versions, maybe different language versions of your project. And so it's good to keep in mind that you can have a variety of different iterations of your project using sequences. And just in closing, perhaps we'll take a quick look at the rest of the icons available to you on this icon strip. The first one, after creating a new sequence, gives you the option of opening a new project, and you'll notice that a lot of these icons, besides having a main function, may have more than one function. If you go to the little down arrow and click on it, you'll see that it can open up a whole drop-down menu that gives you a number of options here. So you can open a project, import a sequence, restore offline clips, import edit decision lists. The next one is save a project, and you'll notice that you can do this also by the very common keyboard shortcut Control-S. However, once again, the little drop-down arrow gives you a number of options that you probably should become familiar with. And a lot of these are probably better handled with keyboard shortcuts, delete, etc. Probably the next important icons here are the use video and use audio icons. Let's say that you want the video. Let's maybe just pull this down a little bit. Let's say you want video when you're placing clips on your timeline, but you don't want the audio. The audio is completely unusable. What you can do is put a line through this by clicking it once, so that now when you send or drag clips to the timeline, it's only going to bring in the video portion of these. Even if you are to go to your bin and drag a number of shots in at once to the timeline, you'll see that it is only brought in video, not audio. And you can do the reverse as well. If you want, you can mute the video, and now as you drag clips to the timeline, all it's going to do is bring in the audio and not the video. Okay, so that's good to know that you can have your options there. We've talked about these in another tutorial, and we'll probably come back and review them again, but it simply allows you to toggle back and forth between various modes that affect the way video comes to your timeline. Ripple modes and sync modes and insert modes. And it's important to know how those work, because they really can have an incredible impact upon how video lands on your timeline. And our title tool, you can add voiceover to your project using that icon there, the little mic icon. You can do a render in and out with this, and that can be helpful at times. You can toggle your bin window on and off with this icon. You can add an audio mixer window to be able to work with your audio a little bit, and we'll have a whole tutorial on working with audio. You can open up a vector scope to help you better analyze your video. And the last one has to do with your palettes. Now, you're not restricted to these icons. You can go to Settings and Application Settings. Now, if all you're seeing is Application Settings, know that you can open these up, expand this out. Under Customize, look for Button Settings, and go to Timeline here. And here, EDIUS will allow you to delete icons that you know you might never use to give way or give space to icons that you might like to add. And one that I like to have up there that does not come by default is the Create a Still Image. So let's just send that over to our timeline icon strip, hit apply, hit OK, and now the first one that shows up there is Create a Still Image. And this allows you the ability to find any point in your video timeline and be able to create a still image from that. So let's say we want a still image of our Maasai man herding his cattle. We just now have to hit our camera to create a still image, and it brings it into the very bottom of our bin that's open. Okay, I believe that does it for our timeline and for this module.